Halo Infinite's campaign was set to be a reboot of the series after the poorly received story of Halo 5, taking on a more classic art style and tone to more closely resemble the original trilogy. It was taking on new challenges, touting an explorable open world filled with side objectives to distract you on the way to the next main story mission. 2 years ago, the campaign was released to critical acclaim, scoring 9s from IGN and Gamespot, and was generally well received by the community. When I heard it was going to be open world, I felt like it was going to be similar to Gears 5, where the open world is there more to pad playtime than actually provide engaging content. I was skeptical that it was going to be an excuse to tout the game as the biggest campaign ever when it was mostly just filler content. And I feel like my fears were justified, as I don't remember liking it all that much. As someone deeply invested in Halo's lore and story, I wanted to get through it as quickly as possible to avoid spoilers and engage in conversation about what happened and where we're going next. With that being the case, it took me a little over 5 hours to complete. This actually felt like the shortest mainline Halo campaign. For someone who was more interested in curated missions and story cutscenes than mindlessly clearing bases and exploring, I feel like the praise the campaign was receiving was overhyped. However, I do realize that this was not the way it was intended to be played. So in this video, we're gonna play through the story and see if it was actually as mediocre as I remember. And obviously this video is going to contain full story spoilers, so if you haven't played it but want to watch this video for some reason, consider yourself warned. The campaign starts with a shot of Zeta Halo during a seemingly large battle with Master Chief doing his thing, slaying some alien baddies until Atriox shows up. For anyone who plays the mainline Halo games and doesn't follow Halo lore, I imagine they're a little confused. Who's Atriox and why is he kicking Chief's ass? I mean, look at this. He's absolutely ragdolling our favorite hero, swinging him around like a flaccid penis. And in typical villain fashion, instead of just killing Chief, he decides to drop him off the ship to float in space? As if his armor wasn't specifically made to keep him alive in the vacuums of space. In Halo Wars 2, where Atriox was introduced, he literally crushes the helmet of a Spartan with his bare hands. He could have just crushed Chief's skull right there in the intro, but I guess then we wouldn't have a game to play. And then we get the E3 trailer introducing the pilot. We see that he's a family man as he watches a recording of his wife and kid, and we see the growth of his hair and beard to show how long he's been stuck in space. His ship sends an alert that there's a friendly detected, and we find Chief hanging out in 0G. The pilot unlocks his armor and explains to him that the battle's over and the UNSC lost, and then the Banished attack. The pilot wants to run, but Chief decides to improvise. Chief has one bullet against an entire army. And those are just the odds we're used to. 10 minutes in and we finally get to play. The first level is pretty heavy tutorial, teaching new players how to do basic things like crouch and jump, and new players how to use the new equipment. The level takes place on a banished ship and centers around shutting down a stasis beam that's stopping them from leaving in their Pelican. When you get to your objective, you get your first introduction to Escharum, giving a speech via a holograph. You don't get much from this little spiel, but you get the impression that Escharum is leading the forces on the ring. Chief changes his plans and ends up blowing up the ship, causing Escharum to pop back in for a status report. Ship's gonna blow, dude. And then we get a nice little escape sequence. As a reboot, this game obviously relies heavily on nostalgia, but damn, do I feel like I'm escaping the Pillar of Autumn way back in the early 2000s. I don't like praising things just because it reminds me of something else I like, but it just feels so good. I make an incredibly masterful escape. Oops. Okay, now I make an incredibly masterful escape, and then, oh no. Well, I made it off the banished ship. I guess I'll just float around in space for a bit. I deserve a rest anyway. Do you know how many times I've saved humanity from extinction? Eventually, our new friend scoops us up, and we've completed the first mission. Overall, I like this mission a lot. A big part of it is definitely the Halo CE vibes, but hey, nostalgia plays. I think it does an okay job of setting up the narrative of us versus the Banished. I feel like it comes out of nowhere for anyone who hasn't touched or thought about Halo since Halo 5's story though. The intro cutscene shows off Atriox, and then shortly after Escharum seems to be the big bad guy, so that might cause some confusion. But like any other first-person shooter, it's us against the bad guy, and just gotta shoot him. After hitching a ride, we get a scene of Chief getting a full understanding of the situation. With our biggest ship, the UNSC Infinity, MIA, and all 1,986 UNSC tags detected nearby being deceased. More interestingly, we get an insight on how banished conversations are going. We have some guy Tremonius complaining about Chief living. I mean, how could anyone have possibly seen that coming? Surviving space in an airtight spacesuit? Nah. And they just casually mention that Atriox is dead and they're stuck on the ring. And at this point, I'm just like, what? As one of the 12 people who played Halo Wars 2, I was really into Atriox and the Banished. Halo Wars 2 sets the Banished up as the toughest threat to humanity yet. They literally say that throughout the entirety of the Human Covenant War, the Covenant were fighting both humanity and the Banished. And while humanity was on the brink of extinction, the Covenant barely put a dent in the Banished forces. I know that's kinda just a problem with ongoing franchises, every threat has to be the biggest and most dangerous ever, but with Atriox being introduced as a leader leading into the next mainline Halo game, and then not to even have him in the game was pretty disappointing. If you don't care about Halo lore, I guess it doesn't really matter if the big baddie is Atriox or Escharum. They're pretty interchangeable to you. Anyways, the scene ends with our first sight of a Banished Blade Master, and Escharum tells him to stalk the Spartan from a distance to learn about him. Little did he know that Chief was actually just looking for his new girlfriend, and no matter how big the stakes, dudes will do anything to get laid. Cut back to Chief and he locates a decrypted message. The pilot wants to just go home, saying if they stay, they're dead, but didn't foresee Chief having the urge to finish the fight. I guess he never played Halo 2. So you fight your way through some very Forerunner looking areas while you listen to Cortana whispering in your ear with quotes from the original trilogy. Whether this is actually Cortana talking to you or just Chief mending a broken heart is up to your interpretation. We make it to the source of the encrypted message and obviously it's just our new girlfriend wondering where we've been. Unfortunately, Chief will only refer to her as the weapon as he solemnly swore to never love again. We find out Cortana was deleted but not by the weapon, and that the weapon was programmed to be deleted once Cortana was captured. But she's still here, so naturally she asks Chief to unalive her. Chief refuses and we're off on a new mission. The ring is broken, Cortana had the index to activate the ring and the weapon had parts of it as well. Something stopped the weapon's deletion and we need to find out why. We get more nostalgic whispers from both Cortana and Dr. Halsey and even see purple Cortana. What a throwback. We find the activation index and we're off on our way to the surface. On our way out, we run into our first boss fight of Halo Infinite. Boss fights are something we have barely seen in Halo. In Halo 2 we beat an old man in a wheelchair to death, and then we had a big battle with Tartarus. Some may count Halo 3 Scarab battles as boss fights, and I deleted Halo 5's multiple Warden Eternal battles from my memory. But there are quite a few in Halo Infinite, and I'll give my final take at the end. But first up, we have Tremonius. There isn't much to him as a boss, he's a brute with a jetpack and just has a bigger health bar than most brutes you encounter. I was pretty underwhelmed with the first boss fight. I don't like looking at a health bar and seeing it whittle down as I dump multiple magazines into an enemy. I really prefer the classic way of enemy classes having different ranks shown by their armor. With lower ranks not having a shield, and as you go up a tier adding a shield, a jetpack, and at the top rank having a timed invincibility power up like the Brute Chieftains in Halo 3. It feels a lot more natural. Just adding a health bar and calling an enemy a boss makes me feel like I'm playing Destiny or some other looter MMO and feels very artificial. But on normal mode, the first boss isn't too bad, and once we take him out, we head up the elevator, get another threatening message from Escharum, and get our first look at Halo Infinite's open world. Our first objective is to clear the landing pad for the pilot, but the first thing I did was go see if the tank gun was still in the game. At one point 343 removed it from the game, but added it back in after community backlash. So a small win for 343. The tank gun makes quick work of the Banished and we cleared our first forward operating base. We get a little map overview of the other FOBs for us to take out if we feel the need, and receive a UNSC distress signal to check out. We jump on the Pelican and take off. Again, 343 is hammering the nostalgia chords, and it's definitely working. Looking out the back of the Pelican like I'm playing the Silent Cartographer again, jamming out to some classic Halo music. Just take a listen. Halo music just hits different. Makes you forget about all the trees popping like balloons in the background. The weapon starts asking questions she doesn't want the answer to. All Cortana ever did was care too much. And then we jump out of the Pelican before we hit our destination. Thanks for nothing, pilot. I cleared the fob right in front of me and get myself my own ride. I slay some alien scum and find the source of the distress signal, Spartan Griffin. But before we can save him, we have to defeat Chak Lok, our second boss battle. This elite has active camo and a sword, and actually killed me once. As you can see, I kept using the scan ability to try and scope him out, but I'm just now realizing that I'm a moron because I just unlocked the threat sensor before this and was definitely supposed to use that to spot him when camoed. Either way, Chaklock is just a basic camoed elite with an obnoxious amount of health, so I beat his ass and freed Spartan Griffin. Kinda weird seeing a torture scene in Halo with them so determined to keep this game as a T rating. You don't really see any blood or torture, just Spartan Griffin screaming as if he was getting tortured. But I guess they did a number on him because he tells us the Banished are looking for something called the Conservatory and then promptly dies in my arms. So much for Spartans never die. I feel like I just found out Santa wasn't real. Who knew Oni was capable of lying to us? Anyway, we're off to the Excavation Site to look for the Conservatory. Well, that was the plan, but I really wanted Halo Infinite to distract me on this playthrough, suck me off the beaten path. I don't think the pilot appreciated my dilly-dallying, coming at me like a jealous girlfriend, but I ignored him the way I would a real girlfriend if she existed and cleared this fob on my way. I grabbed a fresh mongoose and drove it like I would any of my ATVs. I let myself get distracted again and stopped to take out a banished outpost. Believe it or not, this is the first time I ever even went to one of these. I didn't even see one when I played Halo Infinite 2 years ago. It's basically a fob on steroids, with 5 silos to raise out of the ground to destroy and 4 repair bays to sabotage before it's officially considered cleared. The fobs so far kinda feel like busy work. I can show up and clear it in a minute or two, but the outpost actually took me a good 10 minutes and I feel like I'm finally starting to see value in the open world. I kinda think of games like Far Cry or Ghost Recon Wildlands where I'd hop on with some friends, maybe grab a few beers, and just shoot the shit while running missions. I think clearing fobs, and to much greater extent outposts, is a perfect activity with some friends while talking about some funny shit that happened that day at work, or making plans for the weekend. It turns the campaign from linear missions that you've beaten 100 times into a sorta hub world you can hang out in as a background activity while hanging out in an Xbox party. Especially in today's world where skill-based matchmaking can feel like you need to snort a line of G Fuel and be screaming callouts in your mic just to have fun in social matchmaking. But back to the main story. We make it to the extraction site where it's eerily too quiet. Turns out they set a trap for us. After 10 minutes of fighting, we clear out the Banished and try to shut down the mining laser, just to get ambushed again, this time by Bassus the Brute, our next boss battle. After an obnoxious amount of bullets, we defeat Bassus and finally turn that glowing laser off. And at this point, I'm already over the whole boss battle thing. It feels like we're getting one every mission, and it just makes me feel like I'm playing Destiny. So far they've just been normal enemies turned into bullet sponges. I genuinely think the levels will be just fine without them, but I know there's plenty more to come, so let's check out that cave. We find another dead Spartan, missing an action Spartan, and get access to the drop wall. I'll try to remember to use it. I struggled to find the power core to open this door, so much so that I had to look it up and felt really stupid for not realizing it was literally right there. Why is this even in the game? They're so simple that you can't even consider them puzzles. It literally adds 3 seconds to the game unless you're a moron like me. The doors might as well just be powered up already. Like, what are they doing just trying to pad every second possible to this incredibly short main story? Yes, I'm very upset that I wasted 5 minutes trying to open this door. So we get deeper into the Conservatory and run into the installation monitor, Despondent Pyre. She's ranting about something called the Harbinger, wondering how it returned after exile, before she gets destroyed by whatever these things are. We make it to the bottom and plug the weapon in to figure out what happened here. We get a flashback of Cortana talking to Despondent Pyre. It seems that at the point in time of the flashback, Cortana controlled the ring but was digging for its secrets within. She mentions that there were worse things than the Flood within this ring, which seems crazy considering the Forerunners were willing to commit die to their entire species to stop the Flood from spreading. And then the UNSC Infinity shows up, insinuating this happened around the time of the battle we saw in the intro cutscene. We get interrupted by these flying bee looking things, and the Banished want in on the fun too. The weapon refers to the flying bees as skimmers, but also considered flying octopus monkeys, and where do you get octopus or monkeys from this thing? It looks like a bee! Anyway, we take them all out and find another MIA Spartan. Thruster unlocked, and I still haven't used anything but the grapple shot. We make it to the end of the Conservatory and are greeted with another cutscene. I guess we're finally meeting the Harbinger, some alien lady looking thing. She locks up our armor and starts talking about how we aren't important and the Endless will be found. but we still have no idea what the Harbinger wants or what the Endless are. I do love how she starts by saying we are not enemies and then armor locks us. And then once the weapon gets our armor unlocked, she yeets us to the moon. And Chief just gets up and walks in the opposite direction. Like, oh yeah, I'm sure that won't be a problem later. Let's just walk towards this shiny building over there. We take the grav lift up into the shiny building and run into the replacement monitor for the installation. He takes us to the top of the spire and we plug the weapon in, giving her access to tons of data. We learn the spire's purpose is to rebuild the ring, and Chief wants her to shut it down permanently to stop the rebuild. The monitor doesn't like that and tries to Sergeant Johnson us, and we're on to our next boss fight. At least this one is a unique enemy. Luckily I just played Dead Space, so I knew to shoot off its limbs before trying to take this one down in style. Not sure who's going to be in charge of the ring now. We learn there's 10 spires, and the weapon tries shutting this one down. The Harbinger was spying on us and Chief gets cold feet. We learn that he still has trust issues, and we get this badass sequence of Chief jumping out of the spire right into the back of the Pelican. This takes us right into what was the first glimpse 343 gave us of Halo Infinite's campaign all the way back in July 2020. We get shot out of the sky and the pilot isn't happy. I mean, I didn't get a shot out of the sky, Mr. Pilot. No wonder you were stranded in space. The pilot wants to go look for slip space drives on some downed ships, and we tell him to take a chill pill and wait till we get back. We destroy the first anti-air turret and Escharum comes in to taunt us. He mentions that the Banished control the ring and soon they'll have the Auditorium as well. He also says the Harbinger and Banished share the same goal and fight together, and then alludes to a future fight between Chief and Escharum. At this point, I'm starting to get frustrated with the story. It seems like at every turn they throw something new at you without explaining or answering the questions you already had. We just had the Harbinger thrown at us but don't really know what she wants, but apparently the Banished want the same thing. They want to unleash the Endless, but what are the Endless? And what do they do? Soon they're going to control the Auditorium, but what does that have to do with anything? I feel like nothing is getting fleshed out and they just continually hang another carrot on a stick in front of us. We're like halfway done the main story missions and I don't feel like I've learned anything about Zeta Halo, why it's important, or what anyone else is even doing here. At this point it feels like the plot lost me as a reason for me to progress through the game. But I guess we'll just march forward and hope things make more sense in the end. We take out the second AA gun and get another Escharum monologue. I'm impressed at how many words leave his mouth without him actually saying anything. Thankfully, there's no Escharum interruption after destroying the third anti-air gun. On our way back to the Pelican, we're greeted by two of the Spartan killers Escharum alluded to, and we have a double boss fight. This one was especially annoying since it takes place in an open field. One of them has a chopper and you don't necessarily have the tools to deal with them. I actually died a couple times on this one. But eventually I found a rocket launcher, utilized some fusion coils, and even hopped on the Warthog turret to take out the dynamic duo. We run over to find the pilot and he lets us know that there weren't any slip space drives on the downed ships. We get a little character development out of the pilot. He says he belongs in the graveyard with the downed ships. We find out that he stole the Pelican he was in when he found us, presumably to flee back to his family. The pilot's clearly going through it, so Chief just does his best to make him feel better. I guess saving the galaxy 10 times over isn't enough for our hero. We need to double up as this dude's emotional support dog. You get some insight into Chief as well, how he feels like he failed Cortana and that he could have stopped this all from happening. Well, at least we're all on the same page now. We cut to the Harbinger talking to Escharum about what's been going on. She thinks they're losing control. She wants the Banished to send their whole army after Chief to take him out, as there's something connected to the ring that's helping him. From what we've seen so far, we can infer that she's either referring to Cortana or the weapon. The Harbinger points to the spire that controls the Reformation and says it needs to be protected. Surely one of the 10 spires we'll be heading to shortly. The Harbinger leaves and we see signs that Escharum is dying. From the messages he's been sending Chief alluding to their final battle, it's clear Escharum is ready to either take Chief down or die trying. He tells Jaga Radumni, who is the elite he told to watch Chief from afar at the beginning of the game, to bring him the Master Chief alive. Now at this point, I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do. Our next mission, the sequence, is only mission 9 of 15 for the main story. But believe it or not, this mission is actually the point of no return for the open world. Initially I figured I'd do everything I could in the open world, capture all the fobs and outposts, take out the high value targets, grab the skulls, and maybe answer some UNSC distress calls. That way I could share my final opinion on the open world and everything it offered before finishing up the main story. But less than an hour in, I got bored and decided to just finish the main campaign. Part of the reason is that I didn't have enough Valor for the Wasp yet, so I could only take a Mongoose or Warthog to travel around to the fobs. It was taking me longer to get to the fobs than it took to capture them. You also get to points where you have to run or drive way further just to find a bridge to get across to where you need to go, and it's too far away to grapple across. While I was out and about, I did take out a few fobs and a couple outposts, and I stumbled upon 2 of the high value targets. I had never done any of the HVTs, so I didn't know what I was in for, but they're basically like capturing a fob with a boss in the base. You do get the added bonus of getting a special weapon for taking out the boss, similar to the weapon variants you'd see in Super Fiesta. I got a plasma pistol for taking out Briglard and a disruptor for taking out Bitpap. Not great weapons, but I'm interested to see what I'll get from the other 13 targets. I also answered my first UNSC distress call, which was again just clearing out the banished and freeing the Marines. I wasn't very impressed. For me, it was just more of the same with a different name. It was just going to be a lot less tedious doing open world activities once I unlocked the Wasp, so I gave up for now and hitched a ride with the pilot. We have a little heart-to-heart with the weapon on our way over as she asks if we're okay. Chief explains that he failed his mission to destroy Cortana. He was supposed to deploy the weapon, but Atriox came for the weapon and attacked the Infinity, beating Chief. The weapon infers that Chief needs to know who killed her since she was important to him. It's interesting seeing Chief seem vulnerable here, feeling ashamed that he lost to Atriox and is chasing answers about an old friend. Not the stoic hero we all imagine him as. This kinda makes me more upset that Atriox is apparently dead and replaced by this dude that just talks way too much. I feel like Chief is on a mission to redeem himself, and that can't happen until he faces Atriox again and beats him. But anyway, we get to the drop-off area and try getting into the Command Spire. Unfortunately, it's locked, and we need to collect data from 4 beacons before we can get in. On our way to the first beacon, we stop to clear a fob I was too lazy to walk to earlier, and then collect the data. We go to the other 3 beacons and clear a banished outpost and fob on the way. At the second beacon, the weapon says she feels like she's being watched, and at the third she says something scanned her. At the final beacon, the weapon says it's a trap and Chief starts the deletion process. But the weapon gets the data and interrupts Chief, and he pretends he wasn't about to Alt F4 her out of existence. So an hour later and we're finally back at the Command Spire. We fight our way through and locate the Nexus. We deploy the weapon, but of course we need to track down 3 power seats before we can power the grav lift up to the Spire. On the way back to the Nexus after each battery, we get whispers of Cortana saying quotes from the original trilogy. Not sure if it's something we're actually hearing or if Chief just has PTSD, but man, hearing things like Cortana talking about choosing Chief gives me chills every time. I don't care that it's nostalgia bait and doesn't actually add anything to the gameplay. It's an instant dopamine hit. Maybe I'm just a sucker, but this absolutely makes me like the campaign more. Anyway, we deploy the weapon and it's actually a trap this time. It seems the Harbinger is doing something to the weapon while taunting us about her plans that I don't understand. The weapon cries out for help and we decide it's easier to just delete her. Unfortunately, she's a copy of the smartest AI humanity ever created, so she overrode our deletion attempt, and she was not happy about it. She doesn't understand why we won't trust her, and Chief has been really hesitant to explain to her that his ex-girlfriend was about to enslave the universe. So I guess we'll just keep walking on eggshells for now. Thanks for the grav lift though. I plug the weapon in at the top and we can tell how hurt she's feeling about our deletion attempt.
Oh.
What is it?
I wasn't talking to you.
Is this what it's like having a girlfriend? Sheesh, glad I avoided that for the last 30 years. We fight our way to the top of the spire, but on the way we run into Adjudant Resolution. Didn't we already kill this guy? It's been so long I almost forgot about the boss battle aspect of this game. And this one is the most egregious, being a shameless copy and paste of a previous boss battle. Did 343 learn nothing from the backlash of fighting the Warden Eternal 10 times in Halo 5? Regardless, we take him out again, hopefully for good, and then ride to the top of the spire. We take out a few banished phantoms and shut down all the spires. The weapon takes a moment to get everything off her chest. She waited 6 months for Chief to come grab her while he was floating out in space. Put her full trust in him and can't understand why he won't do the same. The weapon tells Chief to just leave her here until Jega Redumni pops in and kidnaps the pilot. All we needed was a little adversity to get the weapon back on our side. She tracks the pilot and opens a portal to get us as close as possible. While traveling through the portal, Chief is experiencing flashbacks. It starts with Cortana's creation, and then it shows her warning to the galaxy at the end of Halo 5. However, the weapon experienced it as well. She said they were passing through a data cluster, but it felt real. Maybe Cortana's memories are stored in the ring somehow? I actually don't remember all the specifics of how the game ends, so I'm interested to see what happens. As we progress through, we get a message from Escharum, calling out Chief to meet him for a final battle. I can't wait to shut this dude up. As we get closer to the top of the ring, we see a hologram of Cortana destroying an entire Spartan training facility, followed by another of her threatening Earth, and finally we see her negotiations with Atriox. He refused to align the Banished with Cortana, so she destroys the Brute's home planet. It's at this point the weapon realizes she's a copy of Cortana, and understands why we haven't been able to trust her. Like any heartbroken girl, she's ready to off herself, but Chief realizes that we still need her to finish the mission, so we get a heartfelt scene of them finally becoming a team. Nothing can stop the power of friendship. We make our way to the surface and we're off to save the pilot. We take out some Banished and save some UNSC prisoners. Well, we tried to save them. And then we finally arrive at the Banished base. We have some more drawn out dialogue from Escharum and have to survive a few waves of attacks at a few of the Banished's internal training facilities. Between each one we have to listen to more nonsense from Escharum. God, I can't wait to kill this guy. And then we get another boss fight. This time we get to fight Jega Radomni, a Sangheili Blade Master. This is probably the boss I was most excited to fight, probably because of his cool looking sword variant. And I actually remembered to use something other than the grapple shot for this fight. But like all the others, it's just a bullet spongy variant of other enemies we fought throughout the campaign. We take him out and take an elevator up to the pilot. As we try to free him, we find out Escharum was up there waiting for us, and we have our last boss fight. This takes a lot longer than necessary since Escharum has his shield hooked up to 4 different relays. So you'll destroy a relay, damage him a bit, and then have to destroy another relay. After an absurd amount of bullets, we finally take down Escharum and free the pilot. Thank God I don't have to listen to this dude talk ever again. God damn it, he just needed to annoy me one more time. He dies in my arms like some sort of Disney princess, and I realize we have one more mission. The Harbinger is in the Auditorium, and we need to stop her. As the pilot flies us in, the weapon realizes she's been to the silent Auditorium before. It's where she locked Cortana down, where she died. Once the pilot drops us off, we fight through a few different rooms of enemies and get some sort of dust and echoes from Cortana. This is where the story finally seems to be falling in place. The intro cutscene showed us being attacked on the Infinity. Atriox won and Chief was stuck in space. Cortana was in the silent Auditorium expecting Chief to show up, but it ended up being Atriox. As we progress, the weapon asks us if we're okay, and Chief just straight up says no. Not something you expect from Chief, but I feel you, my guy. It's okay to not be okay. Who would have seen the savior of our galaxy raising awareness about mental health? We see more of Cortana and Atriox's interaction, talking about the secrets within the ring, which I assume is the Endless. Atriox demands she surrender it to her. It seems like Cortana deliberately was leaving these memories behind for us to find, knowing that only we would show up to try and save the ring from falling into the wrong hands. As we take the final elevator up, we have Cortana's final realization. Halsey made a copy of her as the only way to stop Cortana. Atriox cannot have control of the ring, and she comes up with a plan, knowing John will make it work. Instead of letting Atriox gain control of Zeta Halo and its secrets, Cortana destroyed the ring and stopped the weapon's deletion. I guess that means Cortana deleted herself? Unless she ended up wherever Atriox is, since they're both presumed dead. Anyway, we make it to the silent Auditorium and the Harbinger shows up. One final boss fight. We take out waves of enemies and get to put some damage on the Harbinger in between. Eventually we stick her in the face and take her down. On her way out, she seems to be sending a message to someone, saying you have what you need and sorry it took so long. She warns that the Endless will return and then dies. We get one last message left by Cortana. This one really hit me in the feels. She apologizes for everything she did and says she never should have done this alone, since they were always a team. I mean, I doubt Chief would have been interested in conquering the universe, but I'm sure he would have appreciated the offer. Then as the Auditorium is about to blow, we jump through a random portal I can only assume was left by Cortana, and the pilot picks us up. He was pretty happy to see us. We finally learn his name, and then Chief lets the weapon pick her own name. She heavily hints that she's gonna go by Cortana. And then the credits roll. We have one last post-credit scene showing Aatrox unlocking something. I feel like the Harbinger's last message was to Aatrox telling him he had everything he needed. And this is him unleashing the Endless. Wow, what a cliffhanger. As a whole, I really enjoyed this story a lot more than I remember the first time. I didn't like missing out on the initial battle, but towards the end when you can finally put the pieces together, I love how it played out. I feel like making this video also helped me appreciate it more since I was thinking about what was happening more in depth. I still have tons of questions like where did Aatrox go to make the Banished think he was dead? Who are the Endless? Why would the Banished and the Harbinger want them released? But this game originally was supposed to be a 10-year Halo game. I'm not sure if it was confirmed or just heavily implied, but the community was expecting campaign DLC, or maybe just another full-fledged Halo campaign to be released within Halo Infinite. Unfortunately, the game wasn't as profitable as 343 expected, and they backtracked on any future campaign content. But as a base story, the ending was a huge payoff with how everything fell together. I can't help but get chills listening to Cortana's last message to Chief, but the campaign wasn't perfect. If Infinite was your first Halo game, all the dust and echoes from Cortana throughout probably didn't work as well for you. I think it gets the point across that Cortana was very special to Chief, but at some point you're probably just like, alright, I get it. It doesn't hit the same if you haven't invested 20 years of your life into Halo lore and stories, and the boss battles just didn't do it for me. I don't think it adds anything to the game. Each level would have been perfectly fine without a boss. It just takes me out of the Halo universe and makes me feel like I'm playing an online looter shooter like Destiny or The Division. The bosses aren't fun to fight, they just require a ridiculous amount of shots to kill. And I hate the feeling of having to shoot at a bullet sponge. I wasn't a fan of Escharum as the main villain either. I enjoyed Halo Wars 2 and wanted to see Aatrox and Chief go head to head, but he's basically non-existent in this game, and we get a babbling monkey as a replacement. He just had so many monologues that just went on and on and on. So many words without saying anything. It was just, we are the Banished, we beat you so easy, everything is going exactly as planned, and I got sick of it pretty quick. Hopefully whatever comes next centers around Aatrox as the leader if we continue fighting the Banished. But we aren't done quite yet. It's time to finish up some things in the open world. I started by clearing the remaining fobs and outposts. I only had a few left of each, and I can't say I enjoyed it too much. As I said before, I can see the value in these objectives as something to do in the background while shooting the shit in co-op with some friends. But I'm playing this solo. The fobs feel very copy and pasted. If you've seen one, you've seen them all, and there's 12. I found myself turning on podcasts or YouTube videos in the background while completing these open world activities. And if I'm looking to distract myself while playing your video game, there's a problem. The outposts provide a little more value. Instead of showing up and killing some Banished, there's a few more objectives to clear. And it seemed that there's a variety in them. Some are supply depots and repair bays, others are prison camps, and I even found one that was defending a Forerunner artifact. There were 7 outposts, and at least I didn't feel like I was doing the same thing over and over again. But I still didn't feel particularly inclined to do it. I would have stopped after the first 1 or 2 if I weren't making this video. After completing the fobs and outposts, I still didn't unlock the Wasp, so I answered some UNSC distress calls. I didn't even bother completing all of these because they're just like the fobs. Show up, kill the Banished, and free the prisoners. Rinse and repeat. Every single one I did was exactly the same. There are 20, and after I did enough to unlock the Wasp, I decided I saw all I needed from the distress calls. I decided to skip out on collecting all the audio logs as well, since I don't really consider finding collectibles scattered around the map content. It didn't seem like a good use of my time to pull up a YouTube video and follow step by step where to get all 104 audio logs. I already did that for the skulls, but there were only 12 of them, and at least with those I have the opportunity to hate my life by doing lasso. But now that I have the Wasp, I took the time to fly around and take out each of the high value targets. These again were very mind numbing. I turned on a podcast and tried to forget what I was doing. Like I said before, these are basically just more fobs with an added boss battle. combining two things I didn't particularly enjoy. It was kinda cool with the added bonus of getting a special weapon after defeating each HVT, but of the 15 I only really enjoyed a few of the weapons, my favorite being the explosive skewer and the arcane sentinel beam. So after seeing everything the open world had to offer, I can confidently say that they had some good ideas, but it was poorly executed. They needed to make each different open world mission category feel different. I just feel like if you cleared an outpost, you've cleared a fob. You've taken out an HVT, you've answered a distress call. They're all too similar. 54 open world activities that all provide you with mostly the same experience. I feel like I would have preferred them to have side missions or quest lines. Multiple missions centered around tracking down a UNSC Marine squad or hunting down a high value target. They provided quantity over quality, and just because there's a ton to do in the open world doesn't mean it's worth doing. I don't have a problem with the idea of an open world, but it needs to be an additional aspect of the game. I'm sure creating the open world took tons of resources, and with the campaign feeling shorter than all the previous Halo titles, I think those resources would have been better spent making the story feel more fleshed out with more main missions and cutscenes. Maybe it would have contained whatever they were originally planning as story DLC. I genuinely don't feel like I missed out on anything having skipped all the open world stuff when I originally played 2 years ago. And for that reason, I do think Halo Infinite's campaign was as mediocre as I remember. And that's gonna wrap up this video. It was my first attempt at a long form scripted video. I had a lot of fun making it. If for some reason you're still here, you must have enjoyed it. So consider hitting the like button to help push this video out to more people, because this one took me a while. If you enjoyed this format, let me know in the comments and I'll definitely make more of these. Next up, I'm working on a Resident Evil 4 video because somehow I've never played it. I'm not sure if I want to make it shorter, similar to the format in my recent Dead Space video, or if I should follow the format for this one and go really in depth, so any feedback would be appreciated. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Later.